Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Cloud Insight series. You know, there are 3 reasons organizations are rapidly adopting cloud computing: speed, scale, and economics. Today, cloud computing is a business necessity, and we're here to help you find the best solution for your organization. In these webinars, we meet experts from Forrester and Microsoft to break it down to give you the short list of steps that you can take right now. We also deliver the long-term strategies to help you plan ahead. I'm Tricia Manning-Smith, and I'll be your host for this series. And today, we're going to be looking at platform as a service, one of the fastest and most economical ways to build for the cloud. Later in the show, we demo some of the best applications for organizations just starting to move to the cloud. And during this webinar, make sure you take advantage of our webcast interactive features. You can join the conversation in our chat window. We have experts online ready to answer your questions. Also, please make sure to check out our downloads. You can click on that folder icon. You'll see additional resources, white papers, and a link to a free trial. Coming up next, Forrester's VP and Principal Analyst. Stay with us. Joining me now is Forrester's VP and Principal Analyst, James Staton. James, it's been a lot of fun getting to know you during this webinar series. And by the way, folks, if you missed the first 2 webinars, you can always check them out anytime on demand. Today, we're talking about the types of applications that are going into the cloud. So, James, from your expert perspective, what kind of applications do and don't make sense to put in the cloud?
Well, the simplest way to think about it is keep 2 things in mind. The first is systems of engagement are actually the best things to put into the cloud. And what I mean by systems of engagement is applications that face your end customers, faced in partners, and would be a system you would engage with, thus the name, to really understand a company, a product, or a service. And the reason those are best to put into the cloud is because they're the kind of application you're probably going to change and modify all the time, because your customers are always going to be demanding new things from you. And so you're going to want to change that user experience. It's going to be on a mobile device, then it's going to be on a tablet, then it's going to be on their glasses, then it's going to be on their wrist. And so all this change is the kind of stuff that you need an agile platform for, something that's going to abstract you away from the hard things that we need for performance and availability and let you focus on the code. So that'd be the first thing to look at. Second is you want to put applications on there that will activate the economic model. And when I say that is, we talked about cloud platforms and cloud services being pay per use, so that you pay for them when you're using them and you stop paying for them when you're not using them.
Right.
Which means if you have an application that sits there consuming extremely large amounts of resources 24/7, it never uses more, it never uses less, and it never turns off, you're not activating the economic model. So why bother putting it in the cloud? You're not gaining a whole lot.
Right. Right. So for our devs who are watching then, let's help them get started. Should they start with platform as a service or infrastructure as a service?
Yeah, it's a good question. It really does depend on your skill set and what you're trying to accomplish. And it's not as simple as platform as a service or infrastructure service, because those 2 categories are actually blurring together now. So historically, platform as a service has meant you're abstracting up to the application level. So if I'm someone who knows how to write in Visual Studio, I see an environment that suits a Visual Studio application. The middleware is taken care of for me, and all the infrastructure is taken care of for me. But we don't tend to build applications in one language these days. We tend to write a little bit in PHP, a little bit in Ruby. We may take an application coming from a LAMP stack and put it in there as well. Well, that won't fit in that same platform as a service. So you want the ability to move between platforms and drop down to infrastructure and use discrete services where they may have a platform as a service type of value, but they're not a complete platform that you consume. So having a platform or cloud that you can consume that gives you those different types of experiences really gives you the most options. As a development manager, you have to think about that with your whole team. You know, I've got 5 guys who do Visual Studio, 3 guys who do PHP. Do I really want them working on completely separate clouds?
Perfect. That goes perfectly into what we're just about to talk about here, options. Let's talk about options because, of course, the most common use of apps is often not by IT, but by other groups. So, for example, your marketing team, your finance team, HR, they're all using and developing apps. So how is this impacting business budgets?
Yeah, and that's a really good point because it's not about the IT department consuming these things, because we're now seeing marketing applications be fully interactive. We're seeing products that have sensor and Internet of Things capabilities built into them, and those things are not being built by the IT department. And so that means that marketing and the product groups and other parts of the organization are using their budget to go out and get these things. And when they go out and do that, they're oftentimes doing it in a way that we've talked about a lot when we talk about cloud. Visa, MasterCard. And that means it goes into the travel and expense budget rather than going to a discrete tracked budget, and certainly doesn't go back into the IT budget. So it makes it much harder for us to understand how much of the cloud are we as a company investing in. I've got to go find it in a million different places to pull it together. We'll resolve that over time, but in the meantime, we need to start thinking about if it goes into T&E in the business, it's a business investment. And that has to be combined with the IT investment to really understand how much we're spending here. And at this point, business is spending more than IT on these types of capabilities.
All these things that you're talking about will really resonate with our IT folks watching. There's so much they have to stay on top of. And how can they provide support while staying in compliance?
Yeah. So the big thing that they need to understand is something we've been talking about for a long time, which we call the uneven handshake. The uneven handshake says that in order for you and I to do business, you, the cloud service provider, and me, the enterprise, we are going to have to shake hands, but you're an automated standardized service, which means you're going to stop at a certain point in reaching out to me. So I need to know how I reach the rest of the way. So when we talked before about how do you ensure compliance, cloud platforms will have a trust certification about what they do, but that will not protect your app. That will not protect what you change in the configuration of the application, and that's the responsibilities the IT department has. So for them to really support, they have to think about the uneven handshake, but more importantly, things that IT normally thinks about that the developer, the business, the marketing department don't, like disaster recovery, like backup, like ensuring the SLA of the application, making sure it meets the performance requirements. Those are things that IT doesn't really have to think about, but also they have to pay attention to things like what is our cost exposure, and in particular our cost exposure around things that aren't necessarily a cloud, like software licenses.
But like licenses, let's talk about that. It's such an important topic. How can an organization assess its needs in order to pick the best licensing options?
Yeah. So commercial software licenses are actually holding back quite a few enterprises from doing things in the cloud. And the reason is because you usually buy a set of licenses and you can't go beyond that number of running at the same time. So let's say you have 15 licenses to a database. If you decide to put 14 of them in the cloud, you only got one left to run inside the data center. So you're either going to be having to go buy a bunch more licenses, or you're going to have to rethink that decision or not go to the cloud at all. Clouds, in many cases, give you a secondary option where they actually have unique licenses from the same vendor that allow you to rent that software on a per-hour basis, which matches the economic model that's sitting in the cloud itself. So when we talk about applications that activate the economics, it'd be good to have a licensing option that matches that. While it can be a breaker to use commercial licenses given the constraints I talked about, you don't want that to hold you back from achieving what your business is trying to accomplish. At the end of the day, that's really what this is about. If you can generate more revenue, you can improve customer loyalty by leveraging the cloud, do it. What you might have to do is think about it a little bit differently. And when we go back to the licensing issue, one of the areas that exacerbates this problem the most is test and development. So test and development is an excellent use of the cloud because it's an extremely elastic and transient use case, because I'm going to light something up for a few hours, make sure it works appropriately, and I might shut it down. I might do a scalability test, which is great in the cloud as well, but then I might shrink it right back down to something. So it's a really fitting model for the cloud economics. But then we get back to licensing, and I got 15 databases. I want to test 5 times in a row. I'm going to run out of those licenses real quick. So you have to be cautious here that oftentimes commercial vendors don't count your licenses for test and dev. They only count them for production use. So that you're going to have a little bit of leeway with that, but always check with each of the vendors you're using, and that might lead you to switching vendors.
So let's bring it all together. Can you give me some final thoughts now for folks there trying to put together a comprehensive yet affordable strategy? How and where should they begin?
Well, first thing to look at is your objective in using the cloud is developer empowerment. So find out what your developers are doing in the cloud today and how you can make them more successful and more productive. Start there. That's always your fastest path to success. A lot of IT departments say, no, let's put a committee together. Let's spend the next month, 6 months analyzing this. Let's have a strategy. And then 5 years later, you're out of business because your competitor already moved forward. So don't do that. Find out how they're doing it now and how to do it more. That's number one. Number two is make sure that when you choose your cloud partners, that they give you the breadth of services and breadth of capabilities that match the needs of your team. As I mentioned at the beginning, you may have people that write in Ruby, people who write in Visual Studio, people who specialize in big data. You don't want every one of them making a different cloud solution choice. You're going to have too many vendors to manage and too many bills to track. If you can get more of them onto the same platform or more of them onto a small set, that's going to give you an advantage. So breadth of services and capabilities is a second factor to look at. Third is you're probably not going to consume just the services by the named vendor who provides the cloud. You probably want to bring in some third-party services as well, like a monitoring tool like New Relic, or you might want to bring in a third-party database that comes from a different company, or you might want to bring some Linux in. So other things that make up all the options you might use in your company need to be part of the ecosystem, which means they run on the platform, they're trusted on the platform, they're certified on the platform, and you can consume them and not be too worried about being locked in. So that's probably the third big factor to look at. And then the fourth is to make sure that you have the amount of transparency that's necessary for you to trust what you're choosing.
Let's build a little bit more on that, transparency and trust. Let's wrap it up with your thoughts on those.
Sure. So transparency says that if I'm going to use, say, platform as a service, where you're going to abstract me away from seeing how the infrastructure is managed and all that kind of stuff, I still need to know how it's being managed, because I've got this thing called an auditor who's going to ask me how things are being run and will they meet the procedures and processes. And so transparency is critical. And this is something a lot of the cloud vendors sort of screwed up at the beginning, but now everybody's on board with this to some degree or another. But the depth of transparency must meet your requirements as an enterprise. And so you really want to scrutinize how much visibility do they give you to their procedures, their processes, where things are located. If they make copies, do they move them to other geographies, which can hurt data sovereignty? What are their plans? And all of that is really critical for you to understand so that you know you can use it in a trusted fashion.
James, thank you so much for giving us some great thoughts and strategies. It's been a lot of fun here talking to you. Thank you. We have those Forrester's white papers on cloud security and economics that we're happy to share with you. Just click on the folder icon to download those resources. Coming up next, we hear how Microsoft approaches platform as a service. We'll be right back with Microsoft expert Barry Briggs. We just heard from Forrester analyst James Staten, and if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat window. We have experts standing by to answer them. And we'd also like to invite you to join in the conversation on Twitter using hashtag Windows Azure. Right now, Senior Director of Microsoft's IT Architecture, Barry Briggs, joins us once again to discuss the rapidly expanding part of the cloud landscape. We're going to focus this time on platform as a service. Barry, hi.
Hi.
Thank you. So let's start things off at the beginning.
Sure.
What can you tell us? What is exactly platform as a service?
Well, platform as a service means, in short, that you only have to worry about your application in the cloud. Remember when we talked about infrastructure as a service, we said we're going to move a VM with operating system and database and all the other platform components up to the cloud? With platform as a service, we provide the operating system, the database, lots of other components, and you worry about the thing that generates value for your business, which is your application.
We have a fun example of that. You know,
Yeah.
One of the most stunning examples of using applications in the cloud is Microsoft's own Halo game. So let's take a clip right now, and you can tell us some more about the behind the scenes after we're done.
Halo is a rich, immersive story with millions of loyal and dedicated fans. We deliver an exciting and engaging experience to these fans. They need to know what the hot playlist is today. They need to know what the challenges are. They need to know where their friends have been, what their friends have been playing. Have their friends gotten more medals than them? They need to know all of this, and they need to react to it and interact with their friends in real time. We need to deliver hundreds of thousands of updates per second to millions of players across the Halo universe. We need to get them the right information to the right device at the right time. There was nothing off the shelf that solved the problems we needed to solve at the scale we needed to solve them. So we turned to Microsoft's Extreme Computing Group.
Hundreds of thousands of requests per second across thousands of servers in real time. These guys are crazy. But in extreme computing, those are the kind of challenges we like to tackle.
For us, using Windows Azure was a no-brainer. Platform as a Service allows us to get thousands of nodes, abstracting away the operating system without having to worry about a thing. We're able to use storage to store massive amounts of data, and we can use Service Bus to route hundreds of thousands of messages around the system without a problem. Now, we need a programming model that allows us to scale limitlessly, transcending the machine boundaries while still maintaining that real-time performance need that we have.
We took the actor model approach and we built a modern cloud-scale distributed framework optimized for Windows Azure. We call it Orleans, and that's the framework that allows us to build large graphs of live actors distributed across thousands of machines, and those actors can interact in real time. In our lab, we tested one of the real services, handling over 1 million requests per second on just 125 servers.
By leveraging Azure and Orleans, we were able to deliver dozens of services all operating at massive scale.
Hundreds of thousands of requests per second, over thousands of servers in real time. Well, maybe these guys aren't crazy, just extreme.
Oh, that has to be my favorite line. These guys are crazy. Until he came out with the last one. No, extreme.
Right.
Crazy, extreme. There is so much going on there.
You know, what's interesting about this, too, is games are very different from traditional software applications. In a traditional application, when we ship it, you get a little bit of adoption, and then over time, it increases and increases and increases. With games, the highest load is in the first few days of the game's release. And so everything has to work great on day one. And that's what these guys were really able to do using Windows Azure.
That's one of the advantages that they saw with Platform as a Service. Let's bring it back now to other folks. What are some advantages they might see?
Yeah, so with Platform as a Service, as we talked about before, you only worry about your app. You don't have to worry about these non-revenue generating mundane tasks of system maintenance, hardware updates, operating system updates, patches, and so on, all of which, detract from your ability to provide real value back to your business. Not only that, Platform as a Service allows you to take advantage of some really interesting features that we've put in the cloud. Features like media services, which allow us to stream media on demand or live. Things like Service Bus that Hoop mentioned in the video that allow us to connect applications together. And various other technologies like that, BI and reporting and SQL databases and so forth that we have up there. We're providing a wealth of new features that developers can take advantage of.
Tell me, please, about a business-critical application that you've moved to PaaS.
Sure. We talked in one of our earlier sessions about our HR application. I'll talk about another one today, which is a component of our volume licensing system. And this is a component that our customers actually use to redeem licenses for their applications. And it's something that we moved to the cloud. And what we immediately discovered was that we would see, again, the benefits of an application that could scale out as necessary and scale back as traffic went down. Why? Well, customers tend to buy things and buy things more and more toward the end of the quarter, more and more to the end of their buying cycles. And so as the quarter or the fiscal year comes to an end, we see the traffic expanding. And as the fiscal year, in the middle, beginning of the middle of the quarter, the traffic declines. And so we can scale back down. And so what we've seen is actually about a 40% overall reduction in costs for that application as we moved it to the cloud.
And Microsoft is making tremendous investment in the cloud. And that kind of investment means there are just so many features that people can take advantage of right now.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. So a broad range of feature sets that are available. We talked a little bit about media services, for example, where customers can put media in and let Windows Azure handle the encoding, the on-demand streaming, live streaming, and so on. We have integration services where applications can integrate with each other and with external data feeds, and with even legacy protocols like EDIX12, which so many companies use to manage their transactions and so on. databases and visualization and reporting and so forth. We're rapidly moving all of this functionality, have moved all of this functionality up into the cloud. We'll be moving a lot more over time.
A lot of exciting things to come.
A lot of really exciting stuff and tremendous opportunity for IT.
Excellent. Barry, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And if you're interested in learning more, we have experts standing by to answer your questions. You can also email us at assessment@microsoft.com to get a free teleassessment. So next up, we have a great demo that puts all this information into action. Stay with us. Here we are now with one of Microsoft's senior product marketing managers, Tony Maling. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, in the last webinar, we heard about infrastructure as a service, but now we're talking about platform as a service. So let's bottom line it. Can you show us how they differ?
Yeah, sure. I absolutely can.
Great.
Let's start. We're gonna log into the Windows Azure portal, right? We'll go up there, hit the management portal. We spent a lot of time in here last time. I'm going to do something a little bit different. You actually haven't seen me log in yet, and I'm going to use a special account, and all will be revealed when I do this. So let me log in. Just type in my password. Now, this is a special account that I'm logging in as I've set this up, and in this particular case, it does a second form of authentication. It's going to actually call my phone. In fact, I'm going to let you answer this. Sure. I wouldn't normally do this, of course, because that's not secure, giving your phone to someone else.
Oh, okay, so now it's ringing.
So, yeah, so there we go. It answered. This is Azure calling my phone.
Azure calling us right now. Put it in speaker. Okay.
Please press the pound key to finish your verification.
There you go.
And
so press
simply
the pound
do
key.
that.
Yeah.
You have been signed in.
Okay, so then we'll
And it was
see.
that easy.
That was that easy. And
there we go.
I never touched anything. Azure signed me in because it basically said, for this account, I want you to prove that you really are who you say you are beyond just the username password that I typed
And that
in.
was real time. It was
It
that
was
fast.
real time. And it's an example of sort of PaaS service in that the only thing I had to do, I didn't have to spin up a VM, I didn't have to install any software. I went to that user account in the portal in the directory, and I literally checked a box saying multi-factor is what this whole process is called, enable this person.
Okay.
And that's sort of one of the principles of PaaS versus IaaS is as you sort of go up that stack, Microsoft and the platform does way more for you, you know, even to the point where you don't have to see a virtual machine anymore. Because at the virtual machine layer, other than spinning it up and doing all the automation, it's still very easy, but everything inside that virtual box of a computer, you are responsible for. You're responsible for keeping it working, for patching it, for, you know, doing scale and resilience sort of type of operations. But as you go further up the PaaS stack, you know, we do all of that for you. Now, a good example, that's sort of one example.
Yes.
Another example, in a virtual machine, for example, to use a database inside of a VM, you've got to spin all of that up, and if you need that database to be resilient, you've got to cluster the database, which means you've got to have 2 VMs with SQL Server in each one of them, talking to each other, and there's a lot of complexity there to do that, and of course you've got to keep it working. In PaaS, so we've got a database in PaaS. Right.
PaaS.
Let's go create a new database. So something very simple. So again, just like everything else, new, in this case, data, SQL database, quick create.
Okay.
So we just give this database a name. That's your forte. What name do we want in our database? Is it demo something again?
How about create?
Create, there we go. Database server. So that's spinning up a database for us. Now, there's no, of course, under the covers, lower down in the platform, there's VMs, you know, beavering away. In this case, we're several layers above. So we've actually, so it's done there, right? We've created a database. Now, that's it. I can now put my schema and my data in that database.
Okay.
You know, I can click on it, do sort of dashboard scale operations and so on. But under the covers, it actually hasn't created a database. It's created 3 databases. Sort of just like, remember we talked about storage before, and whenever we give you a file, there's 3 copies of that file.
Backup.
Whenever we created a database, we actually create 3 databases. We put those on resilient parts of our infrastructure. We make sure those are all consistent. If any time any one of those dies, we're responsible for propping up the 3rd copy and getting everything resilient or back in synchronization again.
Fail safe.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Similar for a lot of these other services. So Websites, there's a classic example. A lot of the time we need to spin up some web infrastructure. Well, why do I have to go down and create a VM and install IIS and configure IIS and all of those things that you have to still do at the IaaS layer?
Okay.
In websites, I can very simply go new, compute website, quick create. Here we give it a name. Let's call it, what did we say? Create web. See if that's taken. That's not. Where do we want to create it? Let's say Western US, create website. And in about 6 seconds, it will create that website for us. Again, this is layers on top of VMs, right? The VM you never actually get to see in this particular case. It's created the website for us. The only thing I have to do now is put my web code on that website, and off we go running. But it's done a lot of automation for us. If I actually browse to this website, so this was our website here, Create Web. This is now live on the internet.
Okay.
Right? It's hard to imagine that something would happen that quick.
Quickly.
If I browse to it,
Yes.
this is just the default page.
Wow.
But you'll see there, createweb.azurewebsites.net.
That was too
That is
easy.
now live on the internet. Now, there's a lot of magic under the covers to make that happen, but as you go up the stack, that really is
All
there
that
for you.
automation
Exactly,
in place.
exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we heard from Barry a little bit earlier about some of the first steps that Microsoft took building applications on Azure. So Tony, how about you show us an app in action here? Take us behind the scenes.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So we spun up the website that we just created. There was no code on there, right? So in order to actually show you an app, there's a lot more goes into that. But of course, one of the key principles is you don't focus on all the infrastructure. You just focus on the code and the database and so on. We've got an app here. It's sort of a customer-facing application and has some good characteristics that are amenable to the cloud. It'll all become perfectly obvious when I show you the app. So here's the web part of the app, right? It's just a website running in Windows Azure. It's also, if I look at database, it's also got a number of databases. This might give you some clue as to what the app does. It's all about tickets. But let's go to the website and actually browse to this app. Okay, so here's the app, right? It's a sport ticket booking application. Interesting, in terms of sort of Azure and scale and resilience and all of those sort of things, because booking tickets is one of those hugely spiky workloads as well.
Exactly.
You
On
announce
demand.
a concert, there's massive demand for a 2-hour period, and then sort of nothing after that.
Right.
In this particular case, we've got a website, of course, that is handling ticket booking. It's also scaled out both, or we can scale out both the web tier and the database tier as well, because imagine a large stadium. There's a lot more demand for some of the tickets nearer the actual event if it's a concert at the front versus at the back. And so you can even scale out different tiers of the stadium, and that's what this application does.
Gotcha.
So it's just a ticket booking app. If we log in as a particular user on this app, I've got some users already configured here. Let me just sort of log in as this person. And this person is actually a VIP. As we'll see when they log in, it says VIP here. Let's go and buy some tickets to the Rugby Charity Challenge. Classic ticket booking, showing you a picture of the stadium. Let's try and find some seats in this price range. It says, okay, yeah, there are some seats I found. Let's say I want both of those. Check out. It knows that I'm a VIP, so in this particular case, it gave me a 25% discount, so on and so on, right? It's a classic app, right? But building this app was really no more different than building any other app. I just write my code, I talk to a database. It's just the underlying infrastructure and plumbing is really already there. And if we let's go back to the Windows Azure portal, look at the website itself, we can do things like, this is one of the advantages of PaaS versus IaaS again, is we can do things like scale this web tier out. So I'm just going to flip the bit into a different mode here. And I can just scale the number of instances of this website up to 10 in this particular case. That's what this particular subscription allows me to do. So I can scale, now I've got 10 copies of this website all working across, the resilient infrastructure. I can do similar operations by scaling out the data tier, not in this sense, but by partitioning the data differently. And so it's a very, very scalable and elastic thing. And I never, in this particular case, I never touch a VM anymore. I'm staying several layers above the virtual machine. I can still do VM-like operations as we see here. I can change the actual size of the machine, just like we could do with VMs. If I want a bigger box,
Okay.
But and I can combine having a larger machine with lots of machines.
Okay.
So you have a lot more flexibility and agility there. So
Okay.
that's a good example of it's just a classic. In this case, it's an MVC .NET application that talks to a database, and that's really no different to how you've always been building them. There are a few nuances, but generally speaking, 90% of the time it's the same.
Okay, well, let's put you to the test then. Let's actually build something, take existing code, and drill down even deeper.
Do you want me to build an app?
I challenge
My goodness.
you.
You challenge me to build an app.
I challenge you to
All right.
build an
Well,
app.
I'm sort of up for that, I think. So let's do that. One of the capabilities we have in Windows Azure is this thing called mobile services. A lot of applications today, we have a lot of applications on these things.
Right.
And there are a lot of choices that you get to make when these things talk to some downstream infrastructure. Most of the complexity of the application is not on the device itself.
Sure.
It's on the service that it connects to. And of course, the cloud is a great place to put those services and have APIs and things talking to the cloud. So we're going to build maybe a very simple app, right? Although it's probably complex underneath, what it does might be quite simple. So let's sort of go there. Now, I already spun up a mobile service. All this is a framework for the API that I'm going to actually write. And it allows me from an application, whether it's a mobile device or a web application, to talk to this back-end infrastructure. So I have some choices here, as we see in terms of sort of the client device or platform I'm going to use: Windows Store, Windows Phone, iOS, Android, etc. We're going to use this one, HTML, JavaScript, because that's sort of the lowest common denominator. It will work on any device. It's just basically a web browser application, whether I'm using it from here or whatever. So to do that, we're going to create a new HTML app.
Okay.
And when I create this mobile service, it's already got a database. So I'm just going to create this little to-do item table in that database. It's really all I need to do. And it's already given me what effectively amounts to my application code and logic. That's the stuff, the secret sauce that you always are going to have to write. Right?
Okay.
I'm not going to sort of start writing that code. What we're going to do is download this stuff. So let me just save this all to, let's say, my desktop. Okay, so let me extract this. So this application is really just these 3 files.
Okay.
And in fact, really, there's only one of these files that's my app, which is really my my HTML page here. Now, of course, it's these 3 files, but we have to put them somewhere. We have to put them on a web server. It's a web application; those have to go on a web server. So let's go up, and remember, we already had one of those. Let's go up to our website. Remember the create web thing that we created? We don't have any application code in it, but we'll put our code that we just got from the mobile service up there. So let's go in. We need to do a few things here so that we allow editing in Visual Studio Online. That's basically an online version of Visual Studio. I don't need anything on my machine at all. I could literally build this application on the beach in Hawaii if I wanted to. Just take my little laptop with me.
That wasn't part of our
locally.
challenge.
That's true. But if you want me to do that, I'll prove that as well.
I'm sure you would.
All right. So that's all done and saved. We can go back to the dashboard. And now I have a new option in the dashboard called Edit in Visual Studio Online. So let me click that guy. And this will fire up the Visual Studio Online experience. And this is basically a view into the code on my web server.
Okay.
Right? And of course, there's nothing there really other than this start page that was that sort of default start page that gets there. So we're going to delete that.
Okay.
So we don't need it. And the things that we do need to remember are those 3 files that we downloaded as our sort of sample application. So let's upload those 3 files. And so those are on my desktop somewhere, and those are here. So these are the 3 little files. Let's upload them. And this represents, even though it's relatively simple, this represents, so this index.html page, Windows Azure Mobile. So this is the name, sort of the heading of our app. Let's replace this with something of our choosing, because we're going to make sure that this is changed so that we can prove it's our app. Hello, folks.
That works.
What should we say to all the folks out there? We hope you like Azure.
Perfect.
All right, so this basically, as I type those things, those bits are effectively live in our site. So if I go back to our website in Azure, go back to our website, the Create Web, and I just browse to that site. I have to refresh this because it was cached in the page.
There it is.
And there's our application. Now, there's a slight problem in the app right now, and we can see that here. Unexpected connection failure. What's really happening here is this application is talking to that mobile service. The mobile service says, I don't know who you are, right? So we have to tell the mobile service, let this application, createweb.azurewebsite.net, talk to you, mobile service, just an API. So we just have to do one final step, and that's a relatively easy step. We go back to our mobile service, we click on the guy, click on configure, and down here, it requires basically permissions to allow that communication to happen. So that's happened. So now we go back to our app.
Okay.
We refresh this, and we should not get that problem anymore.
There you are.
Okay, it's just loading. Okay, so it's just a to-do list, right? So this is a great app, you know, for your mom, right? Sort of give her an online to-do list. This app is literally online right now.
Okay. It's
a very simple application, but what's happening, you know, get some red wine, right? That particular piece of text that I just typed in I got it on the website, it went to the mobile service then stored that in the Azure SQL database. And what did I write? I just effectively wrote a few lines of HTML code and a bit of JavaScript. And all the back-end infrastructure is happening. And I can scale the web tier, I can scale the API layer out, and I can do a lot of things with this application. Now, it's a cross-platform app, right? We built the lowest common denominator. So if we copy this and go to, there's this nifty little site called iPad Peek. So let's show this app running, for example, on an iPhone.
Okay.
Right, there's the app, right? Live running on an iPhone in a browser still, right? But it's live. So, do you like white wine or red wine? I'm going to get you some white wine.
How about some sparkling water?
Sparkling water. Okay, we can do that. Sparkling water. Right, so I added that to the iPhone app. If I go back to my to-do and refresh this, that will be there.
Okay.
These two are live because they're talking to the same back-end service.
Right.
So a lot of the underlying complexity of the infrastructure, this is the value of PaaS. Okay. I can focus on writing my code, and that's all I need to focus on, and my data schema and so on. I don't need to worry about all of this infrastructure. And of course, I can, at any time, you know, for example, in the mobile service or the website, I can go and do, for example, scale operations, just as we did with the website before, and scale this particular API as we did in the previous case, you know, up as much as I want.
And this only took a few steps.
Totally, yeah.
Very fast,
built an app
streamlined
in 5 minutes, I think.
Okay.
It's a world record.
You accepted? I don't know about that. That might be pushing
I can do it from
but,
Hawaii. Yeah, the next time you want me to do this demo, happy to do that.
Thank you, Tony.
My pleasure.
Great to get a look here at how these applications in the cloud work. So next, let's take a look at how a customer now is successfully using a hybrid cloud solution.
Here in the UK, we're the largest general insurer with 14 million customers. We're known as a strong brand, dependable brand, and it's really vitally important to us that our customers recognise Aviva for that confidence that we bring them.
Moving into innovative projects like Aviva Drive means that we need something we can get very quickly. Aviva's always been interested in getting additional information about customers, trying to give them a fairer price for their policies. We looked to telemetric data. The problem with that was storage was expensive. We had to have black boxes installed in people's cars, so it was quite intrusive.
The application we developed is called Aviva Drive. You can download it onto your iPhone or your Android phone. It's an application which allows a driver to record the journeys, and after 200 miles, it looks at their driving, gives them a score. The phone uploads it to Azure so that it can be analysed and are invited to do a quote. Aviva were able to get the Aviva Drive app to market first, beating all its competitors. So we've shown the world really that we can deliver innovation.
It goes beyond just doing quotes into allowing people to share information on Facebook and Twitter. Azure has appealed to us more than other platforms because of the skill set we've got internally, and it just seemed the natural way of progressing. It's a platform as a service as well, so we don't need to have expertise in how to set the infrastructure up. We can literally push a button and it all works for us.
Really, if it wasn't for Azure, we just wouldn't have been able to get a proposition out there. But really, it's about bringing something new, something that allows the business that I'm part of to go someplace we couldn't go before. And I think those are the things that are really worthwhile.
Thank you for joining us. This has been a great conversation with lots of practical insights. But if you've missed any part of this webinar series or you want to share it with your friends, you can always find it on demand at aka.ms/wax-solutions. And hey, before you go, please take our survey by clicking on the survey icon below. We really want to make sure these webinars are addressing your questions. So please let us know how we did. We really appreciate your feedback and we appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.